Buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to my Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Thank you. Welcome to the party, pal. This is Fountainhead Forum 117. I am talking to Jorge Trucco. He is the founder of Patagonia Outfitters. He's born and raised in Argentina. He's a successful businessman down there, and he's also good friend, and he's also had an influence on his good friend Javier Milei. He introduced Javier to the book Market for Liberty. In fact, he did a translation of that book from its original English and got it published in Spanish. So how are you, Jorge?
Hi, Chris. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Thanks for having me.
It's great having you here too, Jorge. How did you become a libertarian or an anarcho-capitalist?
Well, it's I always doubted the things that I heard from the politicians here in Argentina. Argentina is and has been all my life a very socialist-minded country. And you had two parties, the Peronist Party and the Radical Party, and they were both, socialist. But there were people like Al-Sogaray, who was also a politician and an economist, who would talk about, free market and stuff like that. And I started liking the things he said back when I was a little kid. And I became a classical liberal. We would call it liberal, but the word has a different meaning in the United States. Liberal for us, it would mean like libertarian in the States. We also use the word libertarian today, but that's a new term that we didn't have back in the 60s or 70s.
Yeah.
And so I considered myself a classical liberal, and I would read classical liberal authors, a lot of them Argentine and South American. Until in 1990, in the 90s, I met Doug Casey, who came down looking for some. He wanted to buy a place in San Martin de los Andes, in Patagonia, where he wanted to move, and we had friends in common. And he knew that I was running fishing operations. I would know different ranches and places like that, properties and stuff. So he came to my office and we started talking, and he said, "You are a libertarian." And if you don't know Doug Casey, look him up on YouTube. He is a person who actually has been spreading the ideas of liberty and freedom throughout the United States a lot. He started out as an objectivist. The first book that actually moved him was The Virtue of Selfishness, and he was probably 18 years old when he read it or something like that. But then the book that really that was a turning point that actually changed his life was The Market for Liberty, when it was published in 1970. And so from then on, he became an anarcho-capitalist because of that. And so he told me about being a libertarian, what that meant and all that. He started recommending books and stuff. So I started reading, Atlas Shrugged, The Virtue of Selfishness, The Fountainhead, We the Living, all those books. And then he said, "You need to read The Market for Liberty." So I read The Market for Liberty, and I was so moved by the book that I translated into Spanish. And that made a big impact on several various people. I wouldn't say massive, but enough people that we started having meetings, libertarian meetings, that we would call Café ANCAP, that were held on a restaurant in Buenos Aires every Saturday. That was back in 2015. But I don't know if that answers your question, but I went from being a classical liberal, meeting Doug Casey, and then the fact that I met him changed my life. I totally switched into being a libertarian. I have to say also that during the 90s, before I met Doug Casey, I was following a TV show held by Alberto Benegas Lynch, who is
Yeah.
the person that Milei mentions all the time. He had a TV show where he talked about Austrian economics and all everything related to that, including the government and society and things like that. And that was an eye opener. I had never heard anything like that. And he was mentioning Mises and Hayek and all that. And I studied economics in 3 years, and then I did 2 more years, and I got my degree in business. But during those 3 years, I never heard of Austrian economics. It was all Keynesian, and it was very boring. That's why I changed. But then now I have read all these other books. I don't know that is an answer to your question. If that answers your
Yes,
question.
and there is definitely an invitation to Alberto Benegas Lynch to come on
Yeah.
here. So it's out there, So we hope he hears that. So I think I've told him that on Twitter, but he probably didn't. But you get so many messages and stuff on Twitter, you won't see it. But yeah, that's great. So when did you start Patagonia, or how did you get into that? Because Patagonia is all over America. It's become a definitely well-known brand. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, the Patagonia, the brand, the garment and clothing brand is not the same company.
Okay.
Mine is just, I started in 1978, and I guess Yvon Chouinard, who is the guy who started Patagonia in the United States, I know him personally. And he may have started it also in the 70s sometime. And we fished together in Tierra del Fuego back in like 98 or something like that. I remember that.
Yeah.
And I started in 1978. I always liked to fly fish. All of a sudden, I went to Jackson Hole, invited by a fishing guide friend of mine back in '79. So I saw how things were done in Jackson Hole, and I thought, well, if they are doing all these things here on the Snake River, on the smaller rivers like the Green River and the Fish Creek and stuff like that, I could do much more where I live, whereas there's even more rivers and nobody is fishing them nor floating them or anything. So I became a guide, a fishing guide, and a casting instructor, fly casting instructor, fly tyer, everything. And then I started taking people fishing just for free. And then all of a sudden I started getting bookings from the United States, paid bookings. So that was a game changer. I started being paid to take people out fishing. And until I came across a company in the United States by the name of Frontiers Travel. They were the first ones to offer to the American market trips to Patagonia. And so we worked an arrangement, and they started promoting my business. And that was I got so many clients that I couldn't actually handle the situation. So I started bringing down American guides from Montana and Wyoming, young kids. And that was the beginning. And then I started training local guides using the American guides as trainers to the local guides. So I created a huge pool of American and Argentine guides. And that was the beginning of the industry in Patagonia, because after that, I started getting competition people, other people started doing the same thing. And there were no lodges when I started, and all of a sudden, I started convincing the owners of the places on the rivers or by the rivers to lend me their houses or their cabins or their offices, so I could stay there with my clients and not have to drive back to town in Santa Martin back and forth every day. And then those places turned into lodges, and that was the way the lodges were started in Patagonia. And that was, I've been doing that for 45 years. It's been great because that actually enabled me to visit the United States like 45 times and actually travel the world, because you make contact with, you become friends with people from all over the world. So I ended up fishing in Europe and Africa and everywhere, in the United States, everywhere, and in Central America. It's been a good life.
What was your favorite place to fish?
Where? In the world, there's a river in northern Norway called the Alta, and it holds the largest Atlantic salmon on the planet. And it's a private river, very hard to get to because it's all private. And I was able to get there 3 times. The last time was last year, and it's fantastic. And I would say that's that. And then I don't have I like fishing in Montana and Wyoming because it feels like Patagonia. It's very similar. And I don't have a favorite river in Patagonia. There's a lot of rivers that I love, and they are all different from each other, the same as in the States. I don't have a second choice, but my first choice would be the Altai in Norway.
No, it's well, nature is it's just amazing what you can see out there. So, you've been around in a while. Can you give us a little background on Argentina, say during your lifetime? What's happened with the politics? I know there have been some coups and stuff like that, and maybe even something resembling a civil war. Just tell us what you remember about that and how Argentina got to where it is today.
Well, I was born in 1951.
Yeah.
And when I was born, Perón was in office.
Yeah.
Juan Perón, who was overthrown in 1955. I was 4 years old when that happened, but I remember that revolution. I have, blurred memories of those days. And of course, my family was very much against Perón. And there was a very strong sentiment against the Peronist thing. And Perón was a terrible thing to have. But he actually was a populist, and he got a lot of following from certain people, and I understand why. And then there was this coup, but the military coups we had a coup in 55. Then we had elections in 58. The elected president lasted 4 years. The term was 6 years back then. The elected president was Frondizi, and he lasted 4 years, and then there was a coup again. And they appointed a non-military. They got a senator and put him in charge. And then in 63, there were elections. And the thing that the Peronist party was banned, so the radical party would win. But I mean, that was like a lame duck. And the radical party is also statist, is socialist. I mean, it was a competition between 2 different socialist parties. I mean, statist. Yeah. There was no such thing as a free market-oriented party or anything like that. The whole society turned into a socialist society, and even those people who didn't think that they were socialists themselves were socialists. And thought in terms of socialism. That was the thing, and then it went on and on and on and on like that. In 63, we had an election, and it lasted 3 years. 66, we had another coup, and it went on until 73. Again, we had elections, and then Perón came back. And then in the 70s, there were. It's difficult to actually condense everything into a 5 or 10 minute speech, but in the 70s we had all the terrorist movements throughout South America, and here in Argentina we had two groups, or even 3. One was Montoneros, the other one was ERP, and the other was FAR. And they were they were trained in Cuba. They were funded by Cuba. And they actually initiated aggression. They initiated aggression and their reaction. I mean, they initiated aggression during a democratic government, and their reaction from the democratic government it was they started a war against terrorism. They passed a decree in 1975, but then there was a military coup in 1976, because Perón died and his wife couldn't be in charge of anything, and there was a military coup in '76, but nobody fired a shot or anything. But and it had a lot of support from the political class and everything.
Yeah.
And that was when there was a sort of a civil war between the terrorists and the anti-terrorists, the government. And that is presented as they claim there are 30,000 people that had disappeared, missing people, which it's disputed by people who actually say it's 8,000, and some between 8 and 9,000, not 30,000. So that is and it became very nasty. The thing is that from then on, we kept having, that was in '76, that was the last military coup. And then that ended during the Falkland Island War, the Malvinas, Islas Malvinas War. And that was, the military lost total prestige then. And again, we had elections and we didn't have a military coup since then. But from 1983, which was the first democratic government after the military government, until today, which is 40 years, the country went down, and all the time. And this is the result of the wrong ideas, nothing else. It's the result of socialism or collectivism, because that's the name of a thing. It's collectivism, whether it's socialism, fascism, social democracy, or whatever. It's all collectivism. And the ideas of free market, the ideas of the free individual, the ideas of freedom were not here, and they were not popular. You couldn't say that you were a libertarian or a liberal, a classical liberal, because you wouldn't be accepted. It was like a bad word. And only when Javier Milei shows up, he shows up. I met him first in 2014, and nobody knew him. And I met him when I translated The Market for Liberty into Spanish, and I presented the book. I made this presentation of the book at a place where presentations are being done of books, of different books, so people are accustomed to go there. And he went there. He actually attended the presentation, and then so I explained the book. I explained what the book was about, how I got to know the book. That Doug Casey actually got me to reading the book and all that. And he introduced himself. I gave him the book, and then I kept seeing him again, because after I translated the book, people were seeing me, were viewing me as an authority on libertarian thoughts, and they were all the time calling me and inviting me to meetings and to actually make speeches and stuff like that. Even in Acapulco, I was there in 2015 because of that too. Because I told Jeff Berwick that I had translated the book, and he invited me to Acapulco, and he actually we did I can show it to you. We did an anarchist show with him about that back in 2014, both one in English and one in Spanish, with another guy. And I did two anarchist shows, which are still on YouTube, and then that day when I met Javier, he was with he introduced me to a Russian lady who was a writer and a reporter who hardly could speak any English or Spanish. Her name was Kitty Sanders, and she asked me for help. She wanted me to help her to edit a book that she was writing. So I did that, and that had me, meeting her once a week. And she would tell me that Javier had read the book, that he was reading other books, and he was becoming a libertarian. That was in 2014. Also, in 2014, there was the initiative of creating a libertarian party came up, and I was invited to all the initial meetings that they had in Buenos Aires every time, and so was Javier Milei. So I kept seeing him like once a week or once every 2 weeks for several years. And also when other books were presented at the same place where I presented The Market for Liberty, I would attend those presentations. He would too. So we became sort of, I knew what he was into. I didn't know that he was going to try to become a politician, or I would say to run for president, because I don't think he considers himself a politician. He thinks politicians are parasites. And and in 2000, and by that time, in 2016 and 17, people were inviting me to different forums on Facebook, libertarian forums. There were like 50 or 60 forums in Spanish from different countries, and I was a member of each one of them. So there were groups, and I mean, some were secret groups, others were not secret groups. I don't know. There were different groups, but there were forums. And I posted things on the forums, and then Javier wanted to become more known, so he started sending me posts via WhatsApp for me to post on the forum on Facebook, on different forums, and posts that he would do. I mean, that he would sign himself. He would say whatever he said, and he signed that, and he sent that to me to actually spread the thing and become known. So I did that for 2 years, more or less, maybe a year and a half, and I just would, I mean, replicate those posts everywhere I could over over the internet, you know. So and one of the things I did when he was not known, if you read Atlas Shrugged, you can see that people are asking who is John Galt all the time.
Yes.
And I started asking who is Javier Milei. And I remember I kept saying that all the time. Javier Milei actually thanked me for that. And a lot of people say, I don't know who he is. I don't know who he is, and all that. And all of a sudden, I started posting things of Javier Milei. So that was a process that I did. And then after a year and a half of that, he was invited by Alejandro Fantino on TV. He had a show called Animales Sueltos, which means loose animals. And that was the first time he was invited to a regular TV channel, and that was a very popular show where he and his the way he talks and the way he presents his ideas with no he doesn't hold back at all, with no euphemisms or anything like that, made him an immediate impact on the audience. So he started becoming invited again to another show called Intratables. Intratables is something, I don't know how you would translate that into English. I would say people that can't be treated, untreated people, or untreatable people, something like that. But it's called Intratables.
Spell that.
Intratables.
Oh, thank you. Keep going.
And this is where he started becoming, because he started saying things that were so incorrect, politically incorrect, that actually it created a huge impact on the audience. Of course, I was so pleased when I heard, but the things he said, no other politician in the world would have dared say things like, for instance, social justice is theft. He would come up and everybody was talking about, yes, social justice. Even all the parties were talking about, yeah, but we always have to bear in mind that we have to have social justice. I say social justice is theft, because you are stealing from this one to give it to any other guy you want to. I mean, that's not fair. That's not moral. That's wrong. That's theft. And a lot other things like redistribution of wealth is theft, that regulation is slavery, that the existence he started actually uh, installing the notion or the concept of a political caste, political oligarchy or political class, but he calls it caste. And people didn't know about that or didn't actually conceptualize that before. Now they do. He has installed concepts that didn't exist before. And now all the young people understand the meaning of that and believe that that is true. That is a major, major, major step forward. And he kept saying that, and he actually points out who are those who are members of a political caste. And he actually, with names, he says, this guy, this name, he's been in government for 40 years. All his family is in government. So he's part of the political caste. They are benefiting of people paying taxes, of people being robbed all the time from these parasites. He used the word parasites. He used the word looters. So and then he installs those concepts, and those concepts remain there. That's the incredible feat that he's accomplished, in my view. I mean, he just says things that nobody else would have been capable or wouldn't dare even mumble them. And that is the big thing, the big change that he's creating. I mean, I don't think even in other countries like the United States or even people like Bukele would say things like this. And he doesn't hold back. He doesn't use euphemisms. I mean, it just goes forward, and sometimes that works against him, because sometimes you need to know when to say to mention a term, because if they are not prepared, you can have a wrong reaction. You need to prepare them a little more. I mean, I was already an anarcho-capitalist, so that was music to my ears. But I mean, a lot of the regular people, they didn't know about that. And then he comes up and he calls the Pope a communist, and that, I mean, he doesn't care. That's the thing. He's so honest, and he doesn't actually make any calculations, say this is going to be good or bad for my political career. He doesn't give a shit. So he just goes forward and says whatever he thinks, and people actually feel that he's honest because of that, because he may make mistakes, but he's always honest. He doesn't have a second intention, a hidden intention. He's so honest, and so that's what people actually value of Javier. And then he starts explaining the central bank phenomenon. No, and now people understand, because people are born in a country like here, and there's a central bank, and it's part of reality, like clouds and sun and wind and whatever, cold and heat. But I mean, we did not have a central bank until 1935, and the country, when the country was wealthy around the turn of the century, we didn't have a central bank. So there's no need for a central bank. Actually, it's the opposite. You need to get rid of a central bank. And so he starts explaining the concept of what is a central bank, why the central bank is a problem, why the politicians use the central bank to steal from the people through money printing and inflation, why inflation is theft, why money printing is a scam, why the central bank is a scam, and he calls it a scam, why the peso is a scam, and why he wants to dollarize the economy, and he even wants to Bitcoinize it too. We are a little bit early for that now, but he talks in those terms, and he installs those concepts in such a way that's a total cultural revolution. And the people who actually take those concepts are especially the young people. Those people just understand those concepts like this. The older people have a hard time understanding those. They have more rejection towards those concepts in general terms. But it's like a revolution. We were going to have these elections next Sunday, and I think he's going to win. And I think if he wins, and if the forces of heaven, like he calls them, are with us, we're going to see the effects not just in Argentina, but throughout the continent of the world. That's what I.
Yeah. Yeah, this is let's clarify here. In that coup that happened at Peron, one of the exiles after Peron was overthrown was, of course, Juan Schiaretti's father, who, of course, is in the race. And would it be fair to say that these radicals were probably somebody like Miriam Bregman? That there was a fight between Peronists and communists, or what did the radicals that opposed the Peronists want?
No, the radical. There's a here. I think it needs some explanation. It requires some explanation. The Radical Party is not a radical like Miriam Bregman. The Radical Party, of course, they became members of the International Socialism. There's an entity called International Socialism, and they became members of that in the 80s when President Alfonsín was president, and he was a socialist. So he put that party started out as a classical liberal party in the 1890s, and there were two branches. One was a classical liberal led by Leandro Alem, and the other one was socialist led by Hipólito Yrigoyen. And finally, the one that really stood was the socialist branch, but it was not they were not as communist as Miriam Bregman. Miriam Bregman belongs to a different party, more radical than the radicals. But the radicals, because as opposed to the status quo in 1900 that was conservative, they called themselves radicals. Like I could call myself a radical anarcho-capitalist, and it has nothing to do with communism. But these radicals were socialists or social democrats, I would say. But they were not. I mean, social democrat is, if you read the Road to Serfdom by Hayek, I mean, it will lead you to communism or socialism because that's the way it is. But they didn't know that. I didn't want. Miriam Bregman is a communist, a Trotskyist, and she is by herself. She's not part of the Radical Party at all. Those who are part of the Radical Party is Juntos por el Cambio, Together for Change. Macri put together classical liberals and socialists and radicals, and that it's never going to work, because it's they don't have any foundation, any philosophical foundation. I mean, like Milei's party does have a philosophical foundation. And Miriam Bregman also has a philosophical foundation, which is a bad one, but it's a foundation. Now, Juntos por el Cambio, they don't have any foundation. They don't know why they say what the things they say. I mean, they listen to the polls, they read the polls, and whatever the people are thinking of, they go after that.
And Juntos por Cambio, that's Bullrich, and of course, Bullrich was a part of the Montoneros back in the 70s. So she's one. She's one of these former radical communists who now is renowned, and those actually end up being worse than the full-fledged communists, at least based on what I've seen in America. They're still horrible, even though they've allegedly redeemed themselves.
Yes, they are. In the case of Patricia Bullrich, I would say that she's honest. She's not a communist anymore, but she is a person, in my opinion, that doesn't have the knowledge. She doesn't have any philosophical foundation of any sort. She can't. You just listen to her, and she's totally empty, in my opinion. No. So,
I think sometimes they just want to engage in revolutionary violence, and they just look for the cause that's most popular. It's really hard to say. She's a. And then there's I've also been told that, Cuba was funding a lot of these terrorist groups. Like they were funding the Shining Path in Peru. I think they're still funding FARC in Colombia, and they're really stirring up a lot of problems. It's really amazing how much impact that horrible revolution has had on the rest of Latin America.
Not just funding them, they were training them too. That was horrible.
Yeah, and they helped out Chavez, and
that was horrible. But I mean, in my opinion, what we are witnessing now with Javier Milei is something that I have never seen before. I've never seen anybody generate that change, that impact. I mean, install those concepts in a society, in any society, because if you do that in the United States, it's going to be shocking also. I mean,
Yeah.
because people are also politically correct in the United States more and more now than they were 10 or 20
Yeah.
or 30 years ago. And and Javier is able to come to get away with all these things. He just says the most crude things that are true, because then when he's disputed, well, those things, those sayings are being disputed by the people who are interviewing him. He
Yeah.
has the backing to support what he's saying, to back what he's saying. So that's when he actually shines, because he's not throwing things randomly, like not knowing what he's saying. He knows exactly what he's saying. So when he's being disputed, he actually boom, he goes forward and he actually explains the foundation of everything he's saying and leaves everybody silent. And that's the incredible thing, and that's so impressive to young people and to me too. But I mean, I knew all the concepts, that I am just impressed by the way he actually presents those ideas and the way he says those things. And that's why he's also called like a loco, like a madman or crazy guy,
Yeah.
by others, by the people who don't understand this. I mean, a lot of people, actually friends of mine, just don't get it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some people out there. Even some people who, it's very interesting. I remember, Bullrich is accusing him, flying on planes, and then she said, "Mientos, mientos, mientos,"
Yeah.
and he said he's not lying. No, she just, and we haven't even,
No.
we haven't said anything about Massa, but I just because but I don't know where he stands. He just seems like he's another establishment hack.
No, he was bad mouthing Christina 2 years ago. I mean, and promising that he was going to get rid of the Kirchner people and all that. And I mean, yeah, out loud, and that's on that's been on video. That's on video. You can get those videos anywhere. And all of a sudden, he's running for the same party and all that. And that's also a very rotten, corrupted group of people. I mean, that's part of the
Yeah,
of the of the past.
it sounds like you've done really well, but I'm hearing that it's very, very hard to get any kind of business off the ground in Argentina and get it to be prosperous. Is that true or not?
It's very true, and it's because regulation and taxation. I mean, that's
Yeah.
it. I mean, taxation is just, uh, I would say, insane. I mean, the same would be a understatement. And regulation is just crazy. I mean, it's so difficult to do any kind of business in Argentina that it's very discouraging. And I don't know how. I mean, if you depend on the local market, you're selling goods or services to the local people of Argentina. People that do that must have a very hard time surviving, because everybody's broke now. Everybody's broke now,
Yeah.
with exceptions. And now, in my case, I have foreign customers who come down to fly fish, and that's a little better, because you're you're dealing in terms of dollars. So,
Yeah.
but it's very difficult to do business in Argentina. Very difficult. So Javier is promising to an immediate measures of deregulate things and lower taxes and all that. But at the same time, I mean, of course, you can do a great job getting rid of regulations, because there's regulations that are absolutely crazy. But if you're gonna, lower taxes, you would have to shrink the government quite substantially, very fast, because you can't. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to lower taxes.
Yeah.
So, and those are the things that I mean, he's already saying how many ministries he's going to have, and he's saying he's going to have 8, and he's saying which those are going to be, and he's saying a lot of things, and there's a lot of things he's not saying, and we are a week ahead. If we're lucky, he may win next Sunday if he gets 40% or more, and 10 points or more above the second
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
the second party. And if he gets 45%, he wins, and that's it.
Yeah. That's definitely a good sign. And there seems to be and people seem to be very confident, but you never know what kind of dirty tricks they might pull between now.
No, they may.
I had a guy in my last time I had somebody talking about Milei. This is my 19th show talking about Milei. He said there are three ways to get rich in Argentina. You either become a lawyer, a politician, or you become an accountant. And he said accountants make money because the taxes are so crazy.
Yes,
that's what That's what he said. So you're basically
true.
Yeah. And I guess in your case too, though, being you can do something that's really dependent on, your business comes from foreigners, which probably helps. Yeah. And
that's true.
Yeah.
Because you need no matter what you do, you need an accountant, because it's so complicated to deal with the Argentine regulations.
And this guy told me, he said, my in-laws, my father-in-law is an Austrian economist. My mother-in-law was a doctor, and so, yeah. So, what can you tell me about some of the people that are around Milei? I mean, Victoria Villarruel and some of these other people. I've also heard of, is it Piparo and Diana Mondino? Some of these other people.
Diana Mondino, yeah, Piparo. Carolina Piparo.
Well, she's I didn't. Status. Yeah.
Carolina, I'm writing it down. Piparo. Well, Victoria Villarruel has been fighting for the rights of those who were victims of the terrorists, that are totally ignored by the politicians and by the government. The first victims that we had during the dirty war, that's the way they call it, some people call it, were victims of terrorism, and were victims of ERP or the Montoneros or FAR. And those people are treated like second-class citizens. I mean, those victims are not being considered as victims. All these left-wing people who have been able to have influence with the Kirchners and all that for 20 years, only consider the victims of the repression. And the repression, what they call the repression, is the actions taken by the military government or by the military people during the democratic government before 1976, which was the Peronist party in government. Because in 1975, Perón's wife, after Perón dies in 1975, Perón's wife declares war on terrorism, on those terrorists. So it was a legal war, and she actually gives an order to the armed forces to go after the terrorists, and they do so. So that was, legal, quote unquote. And then after the military coup, the military forces keep doing the same thing, and they do it until the end of the Malvinas War. But the majority of the disappeared people disappeared before 1976. They disappeared, or they were not 30,000. They were like 8,753. That's the official name, the official count by a commission that was formed called CONADEP. So what was it? What was your question?
I think I was just asking about one question I'd ask is what were they trying to accomplish with the war over the Malvinas, or as they call them in English, the Falklands?
That was a stupid mistake. The military government was losing prestige. They were having economic problems. The problem with the military governments is, unlike Pinochet, who after 10 years of not understanding anything, he started having a market economy in Chile and he called the people from the
Milton Friedman, the
Chicago,
Chicago boys.
Chicago
Yes.
school, yeah, and they actually did it right. I mean, did the right things in that regard. Here, the military people were not Austrian didn't know anything about Austrian economics or Chicago economics or anything. They weren't even classical liberals. So they got into a bad economic situation, and they started losing prestige. And the best thing they came up with was taking the Malvinas Islands in order to regain popularity again. I mean, that is absolutely insane, because there's no way that Britain would actually let that happen. No matter what it took, that is totally insane. It was unnecessary.
And even if they had succeeded in taking them, would anybody want to live there? I mean, really, that's the thing. Oh my God. Maybe you like to fish. You'd want to set up your fishing docker. But seriously, it was once described as two bald men fighting over a comb. That's one thing about, to his credit. Yes, Pinochet, he was smart enough to go out and hire people who were smarter than he was.
But he took 10 years to do that. At the beginning, he didn't find the solution for the first 8 or 9 years, something like that, and then he did.
So Chile's How does how does Argentina compare to the other countries down in South America? I mean, they're not as well off as Chile, but how do they compare to Uruguay or Peru or Colombia? Better off than Venezuela, I assume. But
yeah, I think Uruguay, for instance, is a stable country. They have a stable government. They are not communists. I wouldn't say they are classical liberals. I think that they are sort of pretty much like social democrats. But it's okay. I mean, it's I don't know if that's going to lead to a road to serfdom or something like that in the future. I don't know. I wish they were classical liberals or libertarians. But they are a stable country. They don't have inflation. Then Paraguay is an interesting country right now. Paraguay has very low taxes, and business in Paraguay is successful. And it's a totally different country from Uruguay, although it sounds similar. Uruguayan people are different people from Paraguayan people, but Uruguay is more European. Paraguay is less European, but Paraguay is a very stable country, and now probably is the most stable country in South America. Then Chile had this reaction, left-wing reaction 2 or 3 years ago that was sort of a threat, but it diluted. It got diluted. This guy, I can't remember his name, the communist guy who was the president, Boric, he wanted to change the constitution, but now the constitution he wanted to pass is being opposed, so they haven't been able to pass a social constitution. So I think that they were very close to losing it, but they are not, and but they didn't lose it, so it's doing pretty well. And all of the countries in South America have, for instance, Peru. They have a stable economy. They don't have inflation. The Peruvian people can buy things. They don't have to pay high taxes to buy a car, for instance, like we do here. Cars are very expensive, and except for Venezuela, and I guess that Brazil. I don't know what is going to happen with Brazil having Lula in the government, because he's a communist. But I mean, in general terms, all of the countries except Venezuela are stable countries right now, and they are safe countries compared to Argentina.
Yeah. One guy was talking a lot about that it's not that safe in Argentina right now, which is unfortunate. But it's and Milei has talked about, he says, I want everybody to have a gun. So that's one solution.
Yeah, that's a thing he had to actually explain a lot, because people are not prepared for. If you ask me, I would say everybody is free to have a gun or many guns.
Yeah.
I don't care, because you know what happens when everybody's armed. Then
Yes.
the criminals are afraid of committing crimes because they don't know who is armed or whatever. Right now, the criminals know for good that nobody is armed, so they are free to do anything they want. I mean, people don't understand that, but Argentina already has a gun law that allows people to own guns. And so all Milei has to do right now is to say what he's doing now. What he's saying now. We already have a law. We're gonna go by that law. The law is a good law, and what he's gonna do probably is deregulate the whole thing about gun ownership, because it's very regulated. And compared to 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and 30 years ago, because I've been a hunter and I've been a gun owner all my life, and I can see the increase in regulation that there's been, and with guns in Argentina. He will probably deregulate all these things and make it easy for people to buy a pistol or to buy a rifle or to buy a shotgun, for instance. And of course, you have to have a test done on you. Of course, no problem with that. That's okay. And but people can have. I mean, Argentina is a more open country regarding guns than many of the other countries. More so than Brazil, which is guns are totally banned. More so than Chile, guns are limited to a certain number of guns, 1 or 2 or something like that, and you have to have certain permits to have 1 or 2 guns and nothing else. Maybe not Paraguay. Paraguay is a great country. They don't have any regulation, any tax. They're great. It's like anarcho-capitalism in some way. But Argentina has always been a country where people have had guns for hunting and for defense. People still don't understand the concept, the founding fathers, when they came up with the Second Amendment, saying that people need to arm themselves to defend themselves from tyranny, to overthrow the tyrant. They don't understand that concept yet, because they don't get it yet. But I mean, it won't take much until we start talking about that.
Jorge, how much did the mass hysteria of 2020 have on the public mood down there? It sounds like to me Milei might not have happened if it had not been for the complete anti-human, corrupt nonsense that was done.
Yes, it could. You may be right, because when he makes the decision of participating in politics, it was on a private conversation that I happened to be watching, in real time, between him and Jose Luis Espert on Instagram. Jose Luis Espert was telling Javier that he was going to participate in politics. He was going to start a political party, a classical liberal political party, and all of a sudden Javier, and that was during the pandemic, Javier Milei said, "And I will help you. I will join you, and I will help you." And that was the beginning of Javier participating in politics. Before that, he would just go to TV programs and say all the things he liked to say and fight everybody there. I mean, it was a hell of a show. He was just shouting and fighting and screaming and insulting, things like that. But that day, during, I don't know what month that was, but I remember exactly, that was during the pandemic, when Javier decides to become a politician. I wouldn't say to become a politician, to participate in politics. And then he starts a group or a movement with Espert, but then he doesn't get along with Espert, and I don't know the details there. And he runs off for by himself, and he starts his own thing. And I think that because Espert at some point is not a libertarian like Javier. Javier, when he talks, he's thinking in libertarian terms. Actually, he's speaking in anarcho-capitalist terms. That's why he has to be careful sometimes, because some of the concepts people won't understand. Espert is a classical liberal who actually thinks that there has to be a government. The government is a noble entity, and it has to be limited, but there has to be a government. He thinks government is good. Milei is something who today he's saying that government, or that the state, is a criminal organization. He says that now. Every time he talks about the state, he says the state is a criminal organization, and he gets away with that. And he explains why. Because it's based on taxation and regulation, which is immoral. He says that, and that's the explanation, and everybody understands that. And it's inescapable. That's the way it is, and that's the way he presents it. And when he says it's a criminal organization, that he says it all the time. That's the substantial difference between his rhetoric with any other rhetoric, his speech and any other speech. Those are essential concepts that he's installing in people's minds.
Yep, it's great stuff. Yeah. I do wonder. I've got to say though, a lot of, and I don't know what happened. What happens with other groups around the world, but a lot of libertarians in March of 2020, we found out that they weren't libertarians, and I don't know if that was the difference down there, but
no, that happens here, but it didn't happen with Javier.
Yeah, and I think this, and I've seen it wasn't like this after the World Trade Center. I mean, we lost a few people, but we lost so many people, and to me, this is a lot less excusable than it ever was. Yeah, so that's good. Speaking of getting back to something like the World Trade Center or terrorism. What kind of president do you think Milei would be with regard to foreign policy? Or it looks like Argentina just kind of keeps to themselves, but
he says
could make a difference because
he says things, and he told Tucker Carlson that he is not going to deal with communists, and that involves China, Brazil. He didn't name the countries. He named the leaders. He said. I think maybe he may have said Russia, but he said Lula. He said he said China, and he mentioned the countries: China, Brazil, Lula. He said Lula. He said Russia, and he said he would side with the Western world, the Western Christian world, and that means the United States. It means Europe and Japan. That's all he said. But then he was asked, he would. Prevent people from doing business with China. He says no, individuals can do business. The government is not here to intercept anything. Is the government? I mean, that's up to the individuals. If people want to trade with China, with Chinese people, they are free to do so. If they want to trade with Brazil, they're free to do so. The government has nothing to do with that, he said. So he throws out those concepts, and people don't get it 100%, because all the things we do with foreign countries, the government is involved. I mean, the non-involvement of the government is something new to many people. I mean, if he says people are there's not gonna be a central bank, so people can trade with anybody they want. The only thing is that me as a state, or as a state leader, I'm not gonna go and do a deal with China or with communist countries. I'm gonna side with the free world. That's the one thing. How that is gonna transpire, I don't know. But it was said that Diana Mondino probably was going to be the minister of public relations. I don't know, and she's a very nice lady, so she would be a good candidate, I guess. And then you were asking about the people that he was appointing. I don't know much. I mean, for instance, but I know that Emilio Ocampo is an expert on economics, and he is the one had one of the dollarization projects that were better considered by Javier and other people. and he's going to be appointed as the president of the central bank in order to end the central bank and to dollarize the country and to end the peso and the central bank and all that. And he's going to be the president of the central bank, Emilio Ocampo. And then Carolina Píparo, I'm not aware 100% of her background, but she, because I wasn't paying attention. Now she's running for the for the governor of the province of Buenos Aires. If she wins, that would be a great thing, because that is the last bastion that the Kirchnerists still hold, the province of Buenos Aires, and that's very difficult to overcome. It's very difficult to beat those people, the Kirchners, in the province of Buenos Aires. So that's going to happen next Sunday.
Yeah, all the elections are on Sunday.
Yeah,
that's very. It's certainly looking like it's good. What's going to happen here? So, from there. So, we were mentioning Villarreal. Yeah. So, what do you think could get in his way if he does get elected? I mean, I assume some people are going to try to put some obstacles in his way, although it probably depends on how decisive he is. If he does win, how decisive the win is. I mean, if he wins 60%, I mean, they'll certainly be more likely to go along with him than if he barely wins. And I don't know, could it go to another election too? That's another question I've got to ask.
If he wins 60%, that would happen only in the second round. Yeah. In the first round, he would be lucky to reach 40, 45. Mm-hmm. But that wouldn't be so clear as if he won with 60%. That is something that I don't have an answer to that, because some people say, well, he will not have enough congressmen, he will not have enough governors, he will have no governors. That belong to his party. So those people may be obstacles to his politics. But when he's asked that question, he actually replies that if he wins by a large margin, it's because people will. It will be a change of the situation is going to be totally different and totally new. Juntos por el Cambio is going to crumble and fall down. Same thing with the Paris Alliance. They're going to fall down and people will realign and reorganize again. And he is already making deals with political, entities. Some of them, for instance, are union people like Barrio Nuevo. And he's being blamed for that because Barrio Nuevo is seen as the most typical political caste. But of course, they are not actually. He's not actually making them become, part of his government. He's just dealing with people who he will have to deal with, which is the unions. And there's one of the unions or two that are siding with him already. And those people are like mafia guys. But I mean, it's better to have them on your side than have them against you. I don't know what the price for that will be, but that's a lot of the things. I don't have a straight answer or an immediate answer to that. I don't know how he's gonna manage to handle all those situations. I think he will find a lot of obstacles, and I don't know how he's gonna be able to avoid those overcome those obstacles.
As much as we've talked about we've talked about Castro and funding influence. I also want to. I usually just asking this for confirmation because other people told me this. Is that all of the college professors most of the college professors there down there are socialists too? Is that correct? And that seems to be the case all over Latin America.
Yeah, with very few exceptions.
Yeah.
If you go to the University of Economics, you're gonna all you're gonna learn is Keynesian economics and nothing else.
Yeah.
And most of the professors and the teachers are left wing.
Yeah.
It's become a very normal thing. Like it's become the mainstream thinking, and that's the thing, because Javier understand me too, and others too, that we are actually performing a cultural battle.
Yeah.
And we that's why he actually so loud when he says the things he says, like for instance, like the state as a criminal organization, things like that, and to change people's minds. And of course, if he wins, all of that is going to change. You're not going to have it, but because all these schools, government schooling and government universities, are indoctrination camps here in Argentina, to the point that even those who don't think of themselves as socialists are socialists or think in socialist terms. And that is something that has to change if you want the country to
Oh
survive.
yeah. And Jorge, is it fair to say that Javier Milei has already won?
Yeah, and
Even if
one,
he doesn't win this election, he's already won, and this is already going to start something that could seriously make a difference. I mean, that we're going to have little Mileis, and we're going to have and that he's changed the conversation. I mean, this is, and has there really been anything that compares to this? I can't think of anything.
I agree with you. I think that already the seeds he's planted, uh, and that we have planted. I mean, by posting all kinds of things. I mean, I've been myself translating all kinds of texts from Hans Hermann Hoppe, from Rothbard, from Mises and Hayek, and those people, and Millet, the way he's the people he has converted. I mean, the young people. I mean, if you take people under 40 years old, he would win the election by 60% right away. If
Yeah.
only the people under 40 would be the only people that voted. So you're right. I think that if he doesn't win, he's already won anyway, because he's planted a seed that's gonna keep growing. And if he doesn't win, his opposition is gonna be very, very, very tough. And he's gonna have many more allies now than he did before. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, they're going to want to start being friendly with him after he wins. I don't know if he'd want to. I've watching the debates. I sometimes think Schiaretti might be a guy that Milei could work with.
Schiaretti, yeah. I was
Yeah.
today. I
Yeah.
heard. I was on Twitter, and somebody was saying that he was going to appoint either Schiaretti or the other guy who is with Schiaretti. His name is can't remember.
Yeah, his VP candidate. Yeah, because it
Yeah.
seems like to me there's very much a divide between Buenos Aires and the rest of the country, and Schiaretti being a provincial governor. Being a provincial governor, he's not fond of the political class in Buenos Aires. Is what
No,
at least that's what I'm
but
getting.
he is a political class of his own in
Yeah.
Cordoba. So I mean,
Yeah.
Millet is going to be blamed for dealing with the cast if he works a deal with Schiaretti.
Yeah.
And but I mean, there's no other way out, because if he doesn't have people, he will be blamed by not having people,
Yeah.
having people. And if he actually sides with other people, any other one that he sides with is part of the political caste. Because where are you going to
Yeah.
find people who have never been in the government? And it's impossible. So what actually he explains, that if the people want to join us under our terms, under our principles, everybody's welcome. That's what he's saying right now. Everybody under our principles, under our philosophy, under the forces of heaven, under the ideas of freedom, they are welcome, no matter where they come from. If they are converts, we accept them. The other guy I was trying to mention is Randazzo, who is with Schiaretti, and I understand that Randazzo is a Schiaretti's vice president candidate.
Yeah.
I read something last night or this morning that he was dealing with Javier's people some way, and that did transpire during the debate somehow, because neither Randazzo nor Schiaretti were hard on Javier at all, while the others indeed were very, very hard, tried to be as hard as possible. But that could be, of course, I mean, he's going to find allies, and that's my hope, that he finds enough allies, and the right allies, that he can survive. Because if he's going to pass new laws, he will have to have those laws passed. Although I remember when Kirchner took office in 2003, he was very weak. He won with a 22%, and they had to go to a second round. They didn't. Menem didn't want, because he thought he was going to lose, and so Kirchner won with only 22%. He didn't have a majority in Congress, but he managed to control the government, and he also used what we call DNUs, which are decrees of necessity and urgency and necessity decrees. And if Congress declares that the situation is an emergency situation, which is what it is happening right now, the president can use those decrees. And that is something that is not being talked about, but probably they are thinking about that too, because that's what Kirchner did, and that's what Javier may have to do. I'm not sure. A lot of things I don't know, because I'm not actually working with him on this campaign. I'm just corresponding with him. I just sent him a message saying that I was going to have an interview with you, and sometimes he will reply, because right now he's so immersed in the campaign and all that. I don't know how he actually has. Actually, when he won the primaries, I sent him a message, and he answered, "Thanks, Jorge. Thanks." But it's I don't know if he actually checks his own telephone, his own cell phone himself. Because right now it's maddening, all the things he's doing.
Oh, he's probably getting. For every interview he does, he's probably getting at least 50 requests.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just I've heard this. Yeah, I've heard this from lots of people. I mean, it's I always consider that when I talk to people. It's like it's a really amazing seeing what's happening here, though. Who are some of his supporters? What demographic? I mean, does he have any big supporters? Who is his? What demographics is he attracting?
Well, this is interesting, because the Kirchner people thought. All the young people traditionally would lean to be socialist in the past until last year. So the Kirchner government lowered the age for people to vote down to 16, because they thought that way they would get more votes for them, for the Kirchners. Okay, so they did that, I don't know, 4 years ago or something like that. They passed a law, and they were able to pass a law and all that. But now it's about backfiring on them, because all these young people, all of these, 9 out of 10, are with Javier, no matter where they come from. They go to the most the poorest villages around the outskirts of Buenos Aires, where that was the Peronist bastions. Now they're all with Javier, and in the northern provinces, those that are near Bolivia and Paraguay, that are very poor, traditionally Peronist provinces, those are all with Javier. It's just an incredible phenomenon, because there are provinces he hasn't visited himself, like Jujuy and others up north, Formosa, and I don't know, others that he hasn't visited. Tucumán, I think he didn't visit Tucumán, but there were 5 or 6 provinces he hadn't visited, where he won by an incredible margin, more so than in the city of Buenos Aires at the beginning. The first election that he participated of was in 2 years ago, in 2021, when he was running for as a congressman for the city of Buenos Aires, and he got 16 or 17%, and that was a major feat. And then they blame, well, that's an urban phenomenon. They would say the Juntos por el Cambio and the Kirchner people. They say that's an urban phenomenon. Now the irony is that he hasn't grown. His party hasn't grown in the city of Buenos Aires, but it's grown everywhere else. And the city of Buenos Aires still has 17, 18, or 20%. But in the other provinces, in the northern provinces, even in provinces that he's never been to, he's like 60% and stuff like that. And now with the success he had on the primaries, all those people that voted for him are excited to are more inclined to vote for him now than they were before. And those who doubted, now they don't have any doubts, because a lot of people doubted that voting for him was wasting a vote or wasting a ballot. And now they say, no, it's not wasting anything. Now, if we vote for Javier, we're going to win. And so that mentality is spreading out, and it's contagious, and then you can feel it. And it's great. That's why that I wish for him to be successful, because that is going to change the country, and it's going to change the world. Because the minute he starts being successful, he's going to line up with the other leaders or rulers or whatever you want to call them, politicians in other countries. I don't want to say rulers because I'm an anarcho-capitalist. I hate to say that, but he's going to line with the other people who that like-minded in the other countries. That you can see, in Brazil, Bolsonaro, or maybe Trump. I don't know. In the United States, and the whole thing is going to domino. It will have a domino effect. That's my hope. That's what I envision that happening.
Yeah, but Trump had no ideas. I mean,
that's the thing.
I've most frequently compared him to Bukele, and sometimes I've compared him to Maria Corina Machado in Venezuela. But yeah.
And who in the United States would be someone with those ideas? Nobody.
Maybe Thomas Massey, but they're just not doing that well. I mean, nobody in the U.S. has done this well. Not even close. We've had some libertarian governors get into the double digits in gubernatorial elections, but that's about it. It's I don't know it. The one thing we're realizing that's really become the American voter is so invested in this destructive, deathly two-party system that I seriously want. And I don't know if any other country in the world really has a system like this anymore. I see all these multi-party systems where there's just so many parties. In America, Schiaretti and Bregman would not be on the debate stage. The top three would be, but they'd say, oh, they don't have enough votes, and they're very likely not going to be a factor anyway. But I guess the fact that they got 1% means they got there. America is so corrupt, and I wonder if it can be reformed.
Yeah.
And the other thing too, Jorge, I've got to ask, I've got to ask about the social fabric there, because America has certainly had its tough times. We had that depression 80 years ago, 90 years ago, that was largely made worse by the government. But at least then we had a solid social fabric. People got married and they stayed married. They had kids, and nowadays, and that's one reason why I really see South America as the savior of Western civilization, is because it still seems like it's a marriage culture where people get married, stay married, have kids, take family seriously. Am I accurate in saying that, or is it correct to say that or not?
Yeah, you're not the only one who's saying things like that. Yeah. Doug Casey, who I mentioned before, has bought a place here in Buenos Aires, and has bought a place in Uruguay, in Punta del Este, which is a beautiful place there. this beach
Yeah.
and beach place, and he says the same thing. He says that probably the reaction and the good the evolution of the right idea is going to happen in somewhere in South America or Latin America before it happens in the United States, because the United States is already too immersed in a system that is I don't know the way you defined it. It's a that it's not going to change. That it's consolidated the way it is, and uh, it's it will reject any of the of new ideas that would change the status quo somehow or change the system. Whereas in countries like South America, where you have real crises
Yeah.
going on, people are more apt to hear, to listen to changes, and to think outside of the box, outside the matrix. He said that several times, and 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 he actually he's bought property here where he comes
Yeah.
every year. Yeah.
Well, I mean, in America, it's, it used to be, that, now we have people, going into waiting till they're in their 30s to have kids, and they have one kid. We have, I mean, and I think America has one of the highest percentage of psychoactive drug usage. I mean, and these are prescription drugs. They're going to the doctor and getting prescriptions saying I'm depressed or whatever. And not to mention, American life expectancy has been going down since 2014.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and I don't know, and granted, you've got your problems there, but at least, I mean, the poorest country I've ever seen is Peru. But at least in Peru, I still see a culture where there's, moms and dads with kids and families. And the other thing too about Peru, as poor as Peru is, this was in 2017. I saw lots of people who were selling stuff on the street or peddling or hustling, but nobody in Peru was just saying, "Can I have money?"
No.
They were either selling, maybe they're selling jewelry, selling fruit out of a fruit basket, selling artwork, or just selling little trinkets. But but it was never just. It was always this attitude of. And by the way, one thing, if you ever go into Iquitos, which is called the capital of the Amazon, they have the Belén Mercado, the market, and everybody comes around from all over the Amazon. It's like one of the greatest examples of capitalism ever, because all these people come in from all over the rainforest to sell stuff. It's so wild.
Yeah. That's the perfect example of anarcho-capitalism.
Yeah, well, like Mark Passio says,
Yeah.
Anarchy is not without rule. Is not a lack of rules. It's just a lack of rulers.
Rulers. Yeah, I follow Mark Passio, of course. I translate a lot of his stuff all the time.
This is the thing, Jorge. You're going to have a whole lot of translation projects. I mean, there's always stuff down there that still needs to be translated, and it's such a beautiful language. I mean, just get to, and it's probably a really great way to learn. It's a, so many American classics are written in. Well, in some cases, Mises, you might want to, go from the original German and go to Spanish from there. But you don't want to do a translation from a translation, I don't think. But
no, but there's all the Mises books in Spanish. I mean, there's a Mises Hispano, which is a Spanish organization. They have everything. They have everything.
Yeah, I think one of the greatest contributions that the Mises Institute has made is they've put up all these books and stuff on their website. You can get just about anything.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll sell you books. They want donations, but you can also get so much stuff. I mean, all these old issues of Liberty Magazine, where I worked her up there, it's just that's a real service. And I do wonder sometimes if they're really asking permission to do this, but at least putting this stuff out there is certainly a help.
No, I never asked permission at all, because these people, if they are true libertarians, they need to think that they do not need any that I know don't need any permission or anything to spread their own ideas. And I noticed that you had an interview with Daniel Lacalle also.
Oh yeah,
and he's an example of the Spanish version of the Austrian school. I mean, there's a lot of people like him, like Huerta de Soto, Juan Ramon Rayo, Miguel Anso Bastos, and there's a lot of people like that. So
I'd love to talk to Huerta de Soto, because I heard he was one of Milei's teachers, or who were Milei's teachers. I'd love to have them on here if I haven't had them on already. I've been getting economists. I've been getting people all, and some of the people, and I had one guy from Toronto who was on Tim Moen's show. Tim Moen's a Canadian libertarian, and he just said, "Well, Milei made me a libertarian." He said, "Okay, let's talk." He was originally from Argentina, but he'd been living in Canada for like 20 years. But he knew the language. And that was a great talk. And as far as I know, Tim Moen has had one person talking about Milei, and Olga Maria has had one person talking about Milei, but nobody else has had all these people talking about Milei. And it's definitely getting some viewers for me, so I'm not complaining about that. One thing I got to ask is, so if we want to visit Argentina, where should we go? What should we do?
It's a hard. It's the same as if I asked you, where should we go if I visited the United States? What would you say? I mean, of course you need to come to Buenos Aires, but then you can go south to Patagonia if you want to see places like the American West, where there's forests and glaciers and lakes and rivers and ski resorts and stuff like that. Or you can go north to the wine country. A lot of people do that. They go to Mendoza, which is the wine country, and several other provinces, or to the Iguazu Falls. They do
Iguazu Falls, which is where Uruguay and Brazil and Argentina all come together, or Paraguay,
Brazil
all come together.
And Brazil. That's the classic. People who come down to fish do those things too. They spend in Buenos Aires a couple of nights or more. And they go see restaurants. Buenos Aires still is a beautiful city because it was all the grandeur of Buenos Aires during the 19th and 20th century, when it was a very rich country, when Argentina was a very rich country. It still can be seen, and the style of the people, all that is very unique. And then of course you can go south, you can go west, or you can go north. But it's such a big country, it
is a big country.
It's larger than half the United States.
And are the roads pretty good or not? I expect you might be better off flying in some cases.
No, you have to fly. If you're going to visit places, you need to fly. I myself, when I come over from Patagonia, which is my place in Patagonia is in northern Patagonia, and it's 1,000 miles from Buenos Aires. I drive. But if you go to southern Patagonia, it's 2,000 miles, or 3, I don't know, it's something like that. It's very, very long country. And if you're going to go to the falls, that you have to fly. If you're going to go to the wine country, you could drive, but all people fly.
Yeah.
People fly.
Have the penguins made it up to your town?
No, because I'm on the mountains.
Okay.
I'm right next to Chile.
Okay.
The penguins are on the other side, on the coast.
Now, here's the big question. Do you know anybody who has conquered Aconcagua, the highest mountain in South America?
Well, I personally know.
Yeah.
I know people have conquered Aconcagua, but I don't know anybody personally. And it would be 1,000. It would be in the next province north of from where I am, and would be about 800 kilometers, something like that.
I don't know if I'll ever. I mean, it's the highest mountain that's not in Asia, so it's definitely
the second highest in the world.
Also, it doesn't really require a lot. It's kind of a mountain you can hike up, though. It doesn't really necessarily require a lot of mountaineering skills. But
that's what I hear. But I haven't done it, and at my age, I'm not gonna. I don't think I'm gonna do it.
I don't know if I could take the altitude sickness after going to Bogota 2 years ago. That was enough for me. And that's a lot higher, but it's but I imagine too, like if you drive to Santiago, I bet it's a beautiful drive. Stop and take some pictures.
All of Chile is very beautiful. Where I am, on both sides of the Andes. I am on the east side of the Andes, and it's very, very beautiful. It's being east from the Rockies in Wyoming or Montana.
Yeah.
You go west of the Andes, like being California, Oregon, or Washington State, and it's like it's very rainy. It's very green, and it's very, very beautiful. And nice people. All
Yeah.
Chileans, they are just my neighbors, and they are very nice people. Very
Yeah.
good, hardworking people.
I've heard they got really good cattle and really good food too. Yeah, and I've heard about Cordoba as well. So there's Cordoba and Mendoza are kind of the two bigger cities after Buenos Aires.
Cordoba is a highly productive province. Yeah, very, very productive.
Yeah, well, this has been a great talk. Do you have anything to say before we go here? I've loved having you on here. I really want to. Really makes me want to go down there and see what's going on.
Well, I just want to reiterate that next Sunday we're going to have the elections.
Yes.
I wish Milei wins. Hope he wins, and I think he will. And I think this could be the beginning of a major paradigm shift. That's my hope, and I'm very enthusiastic about that, because I have never seen anything like this before anywhere. I never seen, like you said before, he may have already won even if he loses. That's probably true too. But I have never seen anybody, installing these notions that we talked about, social justice, the state is a criminal organization, things like that, taxation is theft, regulation is slavery, things like that, and people understanding that, because he says those things, then he's sort of refuted by the interviewers that he happens to have, and then he explains those things. He has the capability of explaining those, of pushing the notion further in, and that is so great. And he's doing that all the time. And he gets away with saying, SAID is a criminal organization. He says it all the time. And the young people are understanding that better than older people. They understand not just the saying, but the explanation. That's incredible. I think that is a major paradigm shift, and I have a good feeling about that.
Yeah, he did really well in debates, I think, and he's also educating people about the short term and the long term. It's like, we've got to fix these things now, but we've got to make sure this doesn't happen again. I think it's been remarkable to watch, and it's really inspiring to see it come out of what's been really a really dark period. But it's just like Ayn Rand and those three wonderful books coming out in 1943. I hope you've translated Ayn Rand. I also hope you've translated Isabel Patterson's God of the Machine. That is I
haven't translated Isabel Patterson. I would like to. I haven't even read anything from her. Yeah. I translated a book from Rose Wilder Lane.
Yeah, it's better. Yeah, I've read all three books. It's better. Yeah, we had those three books come out. That's a better book. Yeah,
I just translated The Discovery of Freedom.
Yeah,
that was a month ago, and I translated the Ayn Rand books were already translated. I didn't need, but there was one article. Ayn Rand published an article on the Reader's Digest in 1944 called "The Only Path to Tomorrow."
Oh,
and that wasn't people here, the Randians here, because there are a lot of Randians, had never seen that article.
Oh, okay.
And by accident, I came across that article, and I translated it into Spanish. El único camino al mañana, I called it, and I posted it on Facebook, and immediately I had a lot of people thanking me and for the finding and for the translation,
Jorge, I got to ask, when I see Spanish translations of Atlas Shrugged, it comes out as like the rebellion of Atlas. And I said, that's really not very descriptive, because, it's Atlas Shrugged. It's like you're holding the earth on your head, on your shoulders, and then you shrug.
But there's no such,
it seems like there needs to be a better word than calling it the rebellion of Atlas. That really loses a lot. And I think Atlas Shrugged is a great title. Also, when I introduce people to Ayn Rand, I show them her article about Marilyn Monroe. That is because a lot of people know who Marilyn Monroe is. It's a short read, and because when you want to introduce people, you got to give them something that's pretty easy to read and quick. You don't want to give them a book that's got 500,000 words.
Yeah.
which is what Atlas Shrugged is. Atlas Shrugged is, and I think the Fountainhead's like 400,000 words.
Yeah.
Look, when you've written and published your own novel, you don't talk about page counts. You talk about word counts. I just you realize page counts don't mean anything, but yeah. So yeah, my novel is about 60,000 words, which is a good for a starting novel. Well, this has been great, Jorge. I certainly am rooting for things to go well here. It's makes me want to come down there and see what's going on. And, it's, and maybe this will be a game changer for Latin America as well. I think great people, great people, and they deserve that. And so, yeah, I'm Chris Baker. Please like and subscribe to the video. Give it a thumbs up. Follow the channel. Go buy my novel, Escape from the Village, and check out my Substack, and we're out. Thank you, Jorge.